Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast. Please rate our show wherever you're listening, and let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you. We're happy you're joining us. This might be the one.
The one.
Here's the
one
deal.
What, though?
This might... Oh, I didn't get that far in the prompt. So every single time I start this podcast, I say, we got a good one for you. And I really do mean it. I'm not just saying it like, okay, that's my opening line.
It's not like you're biased because we pick the books or anything.
Yeah. Oh, and maybe I need to be careful about that, because then if we read a book I don't like, I'll be like, we got one for you. And then you'll know what I really think about it.
Or you could just say you don't like it. That's allowed.
Hey, we got a bad one for you today.
I hated this book. I'm so excited to talk about
But
it.
then it's a good one for you, because that means we're going to talk about a book we don't like and why we don't like it.
We've done that, though.
Yeah. Anyway.
Frankenstein.
I asked Amber, how can I not say, hey, we got a good one, like just not use the same phrase. So she went to ChatGPT and came up with some options. And one of them, under the playful category of how to say we got a good one for you today without those words, is this is the one. So we killed a tree, 2 trees, a lake. I don't know how much we kill when you do a text prompt in ChatGPT. Like, how much energy is that?
I don't know. I don't actually use it. I've used it like 4 times, and it's usually like, help me write this letter that I don't want to write, and then I digress into like, make it sassy, make it shitty, and then I just laugh, and then I write the letter by myself anyway. But
that sounds about right. All right.
anyway. I think we had to do a poem in German about horror before. Remember that?
You didn't do it in ChatGPT, did you?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, we were using that to make, yes.
We said, like, write us a horror poem in German, and it did.
Yeah, the longest
That's about as much as we've used ChatGPT.
The most I used it was when first discovered it in a brewery with John and Ian in Portland. And it was like, okay, write me a punk rock song about how John eats a hamburger in 30 seconds and Ian is always angry. And it did. And it was funny.
And now it is on the internet, and other people are using that for their story. Maybe that story will come up in someone else's book, and you can sue them and say, hey, I prompted ChatGPT to make that.
Hey, you know that average copy you used given to you by ChatGPT? That's mine. All right. Anyway, we got a good one for you today. No, really, I think this might be the one. Enough wasting your time. This is why I think we got a good one, besides the computer telling me to say that, is because our far and away best free to listen to episode is A Short Stay in Hell. Hundreds of listeners.
Dominates our charts. It's insane.
Yeah, just looks down at even the second most listened to one, which I think is Tender as the Flesh.
Fabulous book, by the way.
Great book. You know, The Only Good Indians is creeping up there. It's on like 85 listeners or something.
I wonder if it's because Stephen Graham Jones is up for Bram Stoker Award with Buffalo Hunter.
It's cool to see listeners coming through. We even got some for Road Through the Wall. So yeah, but we're seeing engagement. So it's good to have you guys here. The reason this is the one is Short Stay in Hell did so well. This is called A Natural History of Hell. So if the connection is hell, then this is going to be our gold mine. This is going to
We'll have to change our podcast to Dusk to Dawn, Reading Hell.
Reading Hell.
And Hell.
Yeah, we're going to start printing out t-shirts and stuff. We might actually print out a couple t-shirts, like just 2 for us to wear at StokerCon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and speaking of, with the Bram Stokers, I got my email today for my preliminary vote. Like that I can do it.
Okay. Have you read any of the stuff that's up?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
know you have, because we have talked at least about one of them.
Yeah, and I want to read, I thought of it because I want to read Buffalo Hunter before I vote, because I really like Stephen Graham Jones. But see, this is the problem. I'm like, I said in our last episode, I'm like, oh, I have to read Coffin Moon, like now. And now I'm like, oh, I have to read Buffalo Hunter now. And I'm like, okay, well, I have time for neither of those. So time you.
So instead, you'll just like
suck.
Lag on reading the podcast book. We've both been there. I'm all uppity this week because I finished reading A Natural History of Hell like on Monday or something and wrote notes for all the stories. So I was ahead of time. And
I finished it like an hour ago.
Yes. And we're always upfront with you guys about that, right? Like we're doing not 2 books a week. one book every 2 weeks.
2 books a month.
So you are getting our fresh impressions.
Yeah, well, and it's hard too. This month has been insane for me. I have had a lot of editing, which is great, but I filled my plate a little much on my assignments. So I'm busting butt. As soon as we're done with recording this, I'm going to go back to editing. So I enjoy it, but I need to work on time management, which is a lifelong
I'll figure it
journey.
out when I'm dead and have no more time.
When I'm retired, I'll figure out how to time manage. Maybe. Oh, and speaking of editing, another book that I worked on, actually the first horror book to be published that I worked on came out today.
Oh, really? Oh, isn't that important?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Which
right?
one?
Disco Mama.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did you do on that again? That's the weird thing about publishing, right? Is you did all this work for this book that I remember you talking about, and then you forget about it because then it has to go through its other publishing steps.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't forget about it, but...
Well, I guess I did. It's not my work.
So, yeah, Disco Mama by Tiffany Meuret. Oh, I'm probably butchering her last name. I don't know. I think it's French.
Meuret? Looks like I said that.
Yeah.
No, this is Moonstruck Books.
Meuret, yeah.
Right? Who did
Moonstruck.
Yeehaw Junction? Yahoo?
I am leaving that in.
Junction.
You're very clearly from the South.
Damn it.
Yeah, Yeehaw Junction, our bonus episode, the beginning of the season.
That book.
Also published by Moonstruck Books.
I really liked Yeehaw Junction.
Local publisher here in Portland. Yeah, and Disco Mama's really good.
Cool.
I really loved working on it. So I hope it goes places. I hope next year I will be voting for this for a Bram Stoker Award. I don't actually know how that works.
I don't know. We'll find out. We'll get an email.
But yeah, so go read Disco Mama. It's a great read. And all the misplaced periods and commas are my fault. So.
Oh, it's like you know the person whose fault it is.
Well, yeah, because it's me.
Yeah, but other people do too now. They got the scoop.
Well, it says my name in the front matter that I was the proofreader. So.
Oh, no. What if you read it and you get a copy?
I have a copy.
Shameful mistakes in there.
Well, I already read it, so I'm not going to read it again because of that fear, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe
I'll read it and I'll let you know.
If it comes out on audiobook, then I'll read it again. But yeah, that's a weird thing, right? Is that like the Adam Driver? He won't watch his own films.
Oh, has like a filmophobia
of himself.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that'll be a thing for me. Like, oh God, if I find any errors, I'm going to never forgive myself. I have a little
bit of that. It's not a phobia, but when I finish a creative project that I'm working on, I'm done with it for the most part. Like I completely move on. Like I still haven't watched the video of my 40th birthday punk rock show because I did.
Oh, really? Ever?
I've never watched it. All right, let's get to the book. We're starting to be that podcast that just chats for 15 minutes. Which is like every podcast, but I don't like that. Okay, here we go. Natural History of Hell.
Can you tell Dan's been grumpy?
I've been grumpy. I'm just resting grumpy soul. Anyway, this book is a book that I like. I've read all the stories in this book. I think I've read the whole thing twice, plus maybe The Blameless and one or two others 3 times. So I know what I'm talking about. Here's the author. Jeffrey Ford is an American writer in the fantastic genre tradition, including works across fantasy, science fiction, and mystery. His writing is characterized by a sweeping imaginative power, humor, literary illusion, and a fascination with tales told within tales. He's a graduate of the SUNY writing school you might have heard about. He studied with novelist John Gardner, who, for any aspiring writers, may know about him. He wrote the classic Art of Fiction, which is a handbook for aspiring authors that basically tells you you're not reading enough, you're not writing enough, and what are you doing? But if you take his advice, you'll probably be a good writer. Ford lives in southern New Jersey and teaches writing and literature at a community college. He also teaches writing workshops for science fiction and fantasy writers in Michigan, and he's written a bunch of stories and stuff. He's a writer. So, how about the book summary?
Emily Dickinson takes a carriage ride with death. A suburban couple are invited over to a neighbor's daughter's exorcism. A country witch with a sea captain's head in a glass globe intercedes on behalf of abused and abandoned children. In July of 1915, in Hardin County, Ohio, a boy sees ghosts. Explore contemporary natural history in a baker's dozen of exhilarating visions.
You can tell that's some publicist copy, but yeah, it's good. There's a lot of really cool stories in this.
Yeah, that summary really downplayed.
Was that bad? Was I lazy? Should I have done
No,
that
it's fine. It's just interesting. No, I mean, it wasn't, you said this is on the book? Yeah. It's worth talking about, I think, because like that's not really a good summary.
Well, it seems like it's trying to catch a reader's attention of like, here are some crazy circumstances, right? Which is used a lot. For
a variety of stories. Yeah. Sure, but I don't know.
There are bigger themes in the book that you could talk about.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, if I read the back of that, I would be like, okay, sure, whatever. But then again, also, I'm not big on short stories, so I think that would have been overwhelming for my brain.
You know what?
Like, wait, what's going on?
You know what the summary doesn't do? It gives you those snippets of like, oh, that sounds interesting, but doesn't tell you anything about the writing style. So it could, it doesn't say like
that's what
an
I think
absurdist take on horror or what, like it doesn't give you a feeling of how it's written, I guess.
That's, I think, where my brain was going. Because it's like, oh, yeah, technically, yes, those are some of the stories, but it doesn't capture the mood.
Let's capture the mood by just like going right into the first story, because I feel like the first story really sets the tone for this collection. And it's also the only story that was written for this collection. The other ones were previously published, which is really interesting because there are a lot of themes and little pieces of information that connect some of the stories, not in the same way as Revenge, which was our very first podcast, where, short stories taking place within a similar community or within the same community.
Well, wasn't it almost like a circle? Yeah.
Yeah.
Revenge is like a circle.
I feel like these stories are more connected like through themes that the author is exploring. Which
is pretty normal, right? For short stories, not to be so explicitly connected.
Yeah. Somebody could tell me that this collection was, written with all original stories, and I'd believe it. Or maybe they were. Maybe he wrote them all together and then, just got 12 of them published and saved one. But anyway, let's start with The Blameless, the opening story, because this is just great.
I really liked this one. This was a great opener for me. It definitely pulled me in. And in part because I felt that the voice was very Shirley Jackson-esque, which I am always a huge fan of. It was very mid-century modern vibe with the perfect family and everything. It seems Pleasantville. And then you see like there's all this weird shit going on and people are just like, whatever. But
yeah, it opens with Ina and her husband, Tom, just hanging out at home, and he's making a cucumber salad that he's excited about. And she gets an invitation. And what is this invitation for?
Well, it's Helen and Tom. Ina is the mom. Yeah, so Tom and Helen, they get their mail and they get an invitation to come to their neighbor's daughter's exorcism, which, it's like this.
For her 16th birthday, too.
Yeah, it's her 16th birthday exorcism. And they have this surreal conversation, Tom and Helen, about, do they want to go? And Helen got a card and she's like, look, it's a nice card. And it's like, congratulations on your exorcism. And Tom's like, how much money did you put in there? And she's like, like $20. She's like, man, this girl's going to make a steal. And it's just so like realistic in the sense of, going to a birthday and or graduation or something, or a quinceañera, but this is an exorcism.
It's kind of new. It's in vogue getting exorcism for your 16-year-olds. I think Tom describes it as spring cleaning. Like, just get rid of some bad spirits just in case.
But it's cool. He like pulls things out of her.
But Tom and Helen have not gone to an exorcism. It's new enough so that they're like, hey, this is a thing people are starting to do. Let's go check it out.
And they get there, and first thing Tom does is go into the kitchen and find the guys and gets a beer. And like Helen goes around and chats with the women. And it's just like any other, what I would imagine, 50s afternoon barbecue party vibe going on. But
yeah. And Ina, the girl who's getting the exorcism, her mom is there. It's great because she's like from the beginning of the party, she's, 2 or 3 martinis in.
Once I realized there was a trend, I started counting them, and I think I noticed she had at least 4
Nice. Yeah.
And that's when Helen and Tom are there. So I think she had already gotten
I'm pretty
started.
sure she enters the door with alcohol on her breath or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she's obviously feeling a little weird about her daughter being exorcised. So it could be a barbecue or a regular birthday or anything like that. People are getting beers and talking. And then the exorcism begins, and they have Reverend Emmanuel Kahn of the High Holy Blameless from the local chapter of God's Church Before the Flood of Mankind arrives. The Reverend comes and begins the exorcism. And it's just funny because the parents in the room are all kind of like, what's going on? And he does like weird dancing and starts speaking in a funny language, like not just a language they don't understand, but in a way that it sounds like he's making fun of them, right? It's just like gobbledygook.
Yeah.
But as things move on, he starts pulling out demons from the girl who's being exorcised, and they come out as like glass balloons almost. He's like, I'm going to take this evil from her right ear and this evil from her left pupil. And then he like pinches and pulls out these balloon looking things, and people in the audience are like, how is he doing that? What's going on? He ends up poking them with a needle to break them. But as the story continues and he's taking out stronger demons, he ends up taking out like a pistol and shooting at
That
these.
was hilarious. It was like, this one's too much. He like has a pistol and you're like, what the? And everyone's kind of like, whoa, dude, taking it a little far. And it like goes off and shoots a hole in the ceiling. And at one point, I think my favorite quote in this entire book is from this story. And Helen and Tom are sitting off to the side. They're kind of just debating if they want to stay or sneak out and just go home, because they're like, this is weird and kind of boring. And Helen says to Tom, all I know is we're getting old and the world is weird. And I just felt that viscerally. I'm like, yeah, watching this exorcism happening and being like, well, kids these days, that kind of vibe. Definitely, I felt that. And also, like, it was just such a ridiculous situation they were sitting in that it just was hilarious to me. Such a great thought.
Yeah, I got a good quote for you. This is a daughter who's going through the exorcism. Her name is Grace. Very on the nose there, but it works really well. And Tom describes her as like, oh, he had seen her basically like hanging out with the heavy metal or the punk kids, like people with eyeliner hanging out, smoking
Bad
and drinking,
attitudes.
right? But the husband of Grace comes out before the exorcism is about to begin, like before they really get into taking the demons out. And her dad's like, our daughter Grace has lost her way, fallen into temptation under the influence of evil. Here are the sins we are conscious of. 1, pleasuring herself. 2, partaking of the pernicious weed. 3, drinking alcohol. 4, consorting with atheists. 5, she is 10 pounds overweight. 6, painting her face and wearing suggestive clothing. When he was finished, he assumed a solemn air, folded the paper twice, and returned it to his pocket. With the exception of the last one, Tom whispered, that's like a normal day for me.
Yeah, that's funny because they all come to this party and start drinking, and Mom's like drunk, and it's like, how dare she chase alcohol?
So this seems like something that might come in vogue during our lifetime, the way things are going. So the way things work out in the story in the end is pretty great, because it's like the Reverend is firing his gun in the house, and then the curtains catch fire, and everything's a disaster. And Grace's mom is just totally drunk at this point as they're ushering people out of the house. And the Reverend leaves like furious, and it's just nothing goes well. But what's great is it finishes with Grace leaving the house, and they're wondering where she is. And she's with one of her friends, like out in the neighborhood.
Yeah, because the fucking Reverend was like shooting his gun off and everyone's freaking out. And she's like, I'm out of here. And she probably just went to go back to doing exactly what she had been doing before. I loved how it was like, so in the end, it probably wasn't even worth it. It wasn't even for her. It was for her parents.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so that was a cool opening. I've read that story maybe 3 or 4 times. It blends, like Amber said, a Shirley Jackson vibe with some humor, with a little bit of horror, but it almost feels like weird suburban humor in a way. That's done really well. We can't look at every story in here because there's 13 and that would take forever. So we're going to skip past a couple here. The second is Word Doll. The main thing I want to mention here is within the story, the narrator mentions a prelate sending a painter to paint the devil, which is in a story at the very end of the book. So this story references another one.
Doesn't he also reference himself in the word?
Oh, he does.
Or at least
his main character is Jeff Ford.
Has the same name, yeah. Whether or not he's referencing himself, I guess, is up for debate because it's not like he has the most unusual name. But
yeah. It seems like he plays with some of that fourth wall stuff.
Definitely.
It's not like in your face. It's more just like this character's name is Jeff Ford. And, obviously that's very close to the author's name. And
he's an author.
Yeah, an author in the book.
Yeah.
But it's not played like too much for the reader. It's just there, which is cool. And then we have the angel seems, which is about in quotes, angel. I don't think they ever explicitly say what it is. It's just a angel looking thing who.
I thought it was a fallen angel. It seemed more like a demonic thing, especially since this book is called A Natural History of Hell. It felt like it was a demon calling himself an angel and like playing on their foolish morals or beliefs, just playing people for the fool.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And his name is Seems, right?
Yeah.
It seems like a play on word, right? Yeah. Like it seems like an angel.
Yeah, this is one of the things I like about this collection and this writer too, is he wears his, play on words and influences like right on his sleeves. Like you said, the angel seems is pretty obvious. Like, oh, it seems like an angel, but it's cool.
But is it that like at the same time, it's every time? Or sometimes is it allowed to just be a coincidence? Which makes it more fun to read, I think.
There's definitely room for interpretation. I want to talk a little bit more about the next one, Mount Cherry Galore. This one really stuck in my head the first time I read the collection. It's one of my favorites. And it includes a witch who lives in a hut in the woods at the bottom of the mountains. And she occasionally comes into town to sell her Mount Cherry Galore or just Galore, which makes people feel just right. So it's like you take this ointment and put it on your neck after a long day, and it's not so
It's like
sore.
Tiger Balm.
Yeah.
It's a cure-all, isn't it?
I almost got more of like a hot and cold kind of vibe. Like
icy hot?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, icy hot. Like I would want to put it on my video game thumb to help the arthritis not hurt so much.
Yeah, it's kind of a cure-all.
But it's great because this is like just carrying the fantastic vibes through it. This witch has a 300-pound smoking hog named Jundle who just sits in the front seat of her car when she goes into town to sell her tincture and like smokes cloves.
So this hog reminded me of my neighbor Totoro from Studio Ghibli. It kind of just had like a Ghibli vibe to me, even though it's like very crass, but I just created that image in my mind. And then especially when they ride on his back. So I have a quote for that. So the hog trotted over to us and made a motion with his head that we were to climb on his back. Somehow, though it didn't seem possible, we all fit. And that right there, I was like, oh, it's the cat bus.
Cool.
So that's where my brain was for this entire story, which doesn't really fit the rest of it. But that hog just had this very backwards, cute vibe in my head. So cool. Just so you know that, talking about this, it'll be interesting.
So part of the plot of this story is there's a minister, Sauter, who's offering the main character and their cohort some money to go spy on the witch. Essentially, like, what's she doing? What's going on there? Is there anything unseemly going on? And they're asking him like, well, isn't, spying on someone not good? And so he makes them deputy angels so that they can't get in trouble with God or the law.
Yeah. And their names are great too. We don't know the main character's name, right? But her adopted sister is Alice, which I thought of Alice in Wonderland. And then her adopted brother is Pretty Please, because that's all he says. And I just love that became his name. It was fun to have such, not silly names, but they fit the story. You've got Tom and Helen in the first one, middle class white name. He has the names that fit, I think. Well, that's all.
So they have to go spy on the witch and then end up getting found by her and the pig and go on a crazy, wild, magical adventure after she gives them some tea. And I don't know, I don't want to go right into the end of it because this one has a really cool ending. But
yeah, Alice in Wonderland meets Studio Ghibli. in a horror short story
basically.
collection.
Yeah.
So I had the right vibe.
You did.
Just a roundabout way of getting there. So one of the things that I love about how this twists into this like Alice in Wonderland Studio Ghibli thing is just how whimsical this one feels. The ups and downs of the story and how some of them seem more realistic and some seem more radical out there, but then some of them start out feeling realistic and then become radical out there, like Rocket Ship to Hell. That one is great because it starts in a normal
sci-fi convention, right?
Yeah, and it's like a normal storytelling, and then it becomes this wild story that you're like, oh, of course that's not true. But I like how he weaves in together the very like mundane cocktail party with the blameless, but it's an exorcism and stuff. So
but then there's Mount Cherry Glory where it's like there's a witch with a talking smoking pig.
Yeah,
I don't know if it talks, but
then as part of that story is dealing with a father abandoning his family, right? And so there is a little bit of serious conversation in this one. It's not just a goofy pig.
Yeah.
But I really like how he envelops the different moods within each and has a little bit of silliness, has some ridiculousness, has a lot of seriousness, and some legit horror. I really like how he did all that. That's great.
Yeah, I feel like his range really impresses me. It feels like covers a lot of different moods. I would probably say this is more weird than horror. I don't know. There's definitely some horror elements. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, it is horror, but because you can tell that there's a lot of influences coming into his writing and there's a lot of different emotions and topics that he's trying to weave through, it feels a little bit more than a straight collection of horror stories.
I felt like The Natural History of Autumn was pretty straight horror.
Yeah, that's true.
The Japanese story. I really
cool.
enjoyed that one.
Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, like we said, we're not going to talk about all of them, but I really liked this one because it was relationship building in the beginning, and then there's like a chase scene, and it almost feels like a thriller. And then at the end, it's just like a really cool twist that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I like this one too. Kind of like what you were saying about how some of the stories work up to the superstitious or so the supernatural elements, and some go right into it. The setting was so starkly different. I don't remember if they specifically say where they are in Japan. They probably mention a few landmarks, but it's Japanese people in Japan after the opening stories, which primarily give you the vibe of our culture, right? So that's cool to just have a really stark setting shift. And then for the next story, Blood Drive, we go right back into modern times. And this is another one of my favorite stories.
A real life horror.
Yeah. So the premise of this is absolutely ridiculous. And I think this really shows Ford's range really well because it could have been, it could have gone a lot of different ways. This was hard to balance, I bet. But essentially, in the world of this story, teenagers who are about to go into their senior year of high school get a gun from their family because they're able to take it to high school for their senior year. So in the junior year, they get their gun, they start doing their training practice and stuff. So that when
it's like getting your driver's license.
Yeah, exactly like that. Different people, of course, are judged on the firearms they bring. Some kids bring guns that were handed down through their family. The rich kids get like brand new modern guns, or some kids have really antique jewel inlaid weapons and stuff like that. And
the one kid has a taser.
Yeah, one kid has a taser. One kid has like, a 2-shot Derringer or whatever.
Yeah, the taser kid ends up getting ostracized because he doesn't have a gun. So you get the same social expectations in high school. And so it weirdly makes this story not so out there and weird feeling, even though it's very weird feeling, and it makes me very uncomfortable thinking of high schoolers going to school with guns.
Yeah, this story definitely felt the most critical on the nose of current times, and not in a bad way. I still really liked it. But one of the main characters in the story, or one of the characters affecting a lot of what's going on, including people taking guns to school, is a senator, Senator Meats. And
I just love his names.
Yes,
Meats, Seams.
Yeah. So there's the Senator Meats, pushed for allowing guns in school. He's also pushing to get kids 12 plus back to work. And he's responsible for mandatory Sunday school and no more abortions. So
that sounds pretty relevant to today.
Very relevant. And so the senator is like making the community strong by getting kids back to work at 12 and building up character and not going to school, and if you do, having a gun with you and all this stuff. And so the community's like, yeah, this is just how things happen. And toward the end of the story, a lot of people end up getting shot in a humorous but also terrifying way. I felt like he handled it well, because within the story it's done with a lot of humor, thinking of what the topic he's discussing. It's very depressing.
And the ending of this is great because it turns out exactly like you would think it would.
Just a big old shootout.
Because teenagers with emotional turmoil within their bodies, all armed, is not always the smartest. And by not always, I mean ever. But the best part is that there's this shootout, and then they blame it on the fact that earlier in the day there was a blood drive. And so they're like, oh, taking students' blood is what actually caused this, not the recklessness of having teenagers with guns, you know?
Yeah, like the events of the day led to this. Otherwise, it's totally
blame
avoidable.
it on this thing where we're actually helping society.
Yeah, so Ford's playing with a lot of different things here, right? Because I feel like there could be a collection, like Blood Drive seems like a story that could be in, I don't know, like imagine Nathan Ballengred, right? It would be written very differently, but I felt like with the collection we read by him, which was North American Lake Monsters, while they are all varied and very interesting, they did have a very strong connection of down and out independent stories mixed with horror, right? And it kind of kept that, like Desperate People, where this is more absurd situations told.
Yeah, I was going to say situational. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely like absurd situations told in a consistent prose style, I guess, which I enjoy.
Yeah, and they're really all over the place. Like the next one is Emily Dickinson. So we go from a high school with high schoolers carrying guns, which is very modern, to Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, I think let's go over two more. Let's talk about this one, A Terror, and then I want to finish off by talking about Rocket Ship to Hell, which is another one of my favorites. And then we'll probably wrap it up there in terms of stories that we're going to go over. There are a few more and a few more good ones, but let's go a little deeper into these two, and then we can look at the collection more as a whole. Do you want to talk about this Emily Dickinson story?
Yeah.
Here,
what a stupid question.
Okay. I know a good way to kick this one off. So this story is essentially, it is Emily Dickinson, and death comes in a carriage and takes her on a ride, and crazy stuff happens. It was inspired by an actual Emily Dickinson poem, of which I will read, I don't know, a couple of the stanzas, not the whole thing, but you can get an idea of Ford reading this and then being like, oh, I want to try that. The poem is called Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had but a way, my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. Stanza, since then 'tis centuries, but each feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. Isn't that how you read poems? You just say stanza for like the middle parts, skip over them.
I pretty much only read Richard's poems, to be honest. Okay, I have read some poetry, but I don't often read a whole lot of poetry. I barely have time for anything anymore. But yeah, I definitely read poetry like that. Stanza.
Words.
Line break. This story, interesting for me, I was starting to worry once Death picks her up in the carriage and starts driving her around. I was like, oh my God, he's turning Dickinson into Dickens. And I thought it was going to turn into a little bit of a Christmas Carol where Death takes her around and shows her it's important to leave your house because look at how you can affect the world, you know? So I like how it actually turned out that she needed to kill a child.
And then write like a poem to break the spell.
Well, that was how that's how she killed. She wasn't actually going to go like stab the kid. She killed him through her poetry.
Well, another cool thing about the inspiration behind the story, besides just that poem that I partly read, is that it says in the book, but I'll paraphrase here, Ford had found was looking at letters between Dickinson and, other people. And she mentioned vaguely, I had a fright this past September in some year where this story takes place, because she didn't elaborate on what that deathly fright she had was. So he's like, oh, well, just like, here's what she was alluding to.
It's a fun story because she pretty much has to write a poem. And even though she's a poet, it shows the struggle of art and how difficult it is. And in the end, she just gives up and writes the correct thing. So there you go. Give up.
Yeah, once
and
you
just
stop
write.
trying so hard, you're just like, just write down anything.
Coming back to your introduction about what's the book called? How to Write.
The Art of Fiction.
Yeah. Give up. Just give up and write the words as they come. There you go.
No, that book was the
Problem
opposite.
solved.
That's the modern writer's handbook. Now it's just like, just read a lot and write a lot. And Art of Fiction also said that, but it was like a teacher who makes you feel really stupid, because they were like, you need to read a lot, and it needs to only be good stuff, and you need to write a lot, and it better not be crap.
Is that why you only read classics for like 2 years?
Probably.
I mean, you had a stint there where you snubbed everything else unless it was at least, I don't know, 60, 70 years old.
There are basically two kinds of
classics at this point?
Maybe. I don't know. There are two thought processes that I run up against in terms of writers or people talking about writing, how they suggest what your reading life should be, right? And there is the side of people like Faulkner and Alan Moore and a bunch of other people who are like, read everything, especially sometimes read bad books. Because if you read a bad book, this was Alan Moore, he's like, you read trash, you can be like, I can do better than this and mean it. And that can give you a lot of confidence. And also reading bad books or average books, you see what doesn't work. And then there's the other line of thinking of like, you have so many hours left on this earth. Why aren't you reading Moby Dick and Shakespeare ad nauseum forever? Because they're the only things worth reading. But, like, only read the best of the best, because there's no way you could get through even part of it. So why waste your time on anything below?
There's such
incredible.
A huge flaw, though, with that, right? Because first of all, you have to want, like, even if you don't want to read, like, I forced myself to read Moby Dick and I hated it. And I know
Sure.
it's an American classic. And one of the books that I read outside of this month talked about like the greatness of Moby Dick, and I'm just like, no.
Well, for example,
it's the prose is so
Moby Dick
well written. It's like, it fucking sucks, dude. That book was so boring. It was incredibly racist. It just didn't do it for me.
That was a bad example, and I totally set that up on purpose. But let's talk about like Ulysses, for example. You read that. That is, undoubtedly a masterpiece of writing.
My point is that I wanted to read that. So I found joy, and I was able to look past the things that frustrated me because I actually wanted to read it. Moby Dick, I didn't, because there were things that were frustrating me, and I was like, well, I feel like I should read this book.
Yeah.
I wasn't reading it because I couldn't wait to read about with that philosophy of only read the best. Well, maybe to you, the best is like smut.
Yeah, right. It's very subjective.
And you're very much about prose and how colorful it is and how well written something is, which is great. And I do appreciate that sometimes, a lot of the time. But for me, sometimes the more important thing is, am I enjoying this story? Am I feeling not necessarily happy, but am I getting good feelings, or am I getting what I want out of this book? Right. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it has to be the best written or the most unique story. It can be very generic and boring, but if I'm enjoying it, that's all that matters, right? So that's, I guess then I'm in that side of the philosophy.
My bottom line is I don't know, what is it? Litmus test? Is that? There's a better word. Barometer? Whatever. Is if what I'm reading inspires me in any way. And there's a couple ways that can happen. Inspired because I'm learning something, there's really interesting information, or like for this collection, it's just so creative. It's creatively inspiring because he just like has so much range over the different stories that he's telling. So it's hard for me to read like a genre book that's just a genre book being a genre book, because I don't find inspiration in that, because it is going over well-worn paths, right? Which is what people want. But I'm not going to be like, don't read that. You should read that. I don't know.
Well, I wonder too if, we're looking for different things, right? You want to be inspired. Well, you're a writer, so you want to find inspiration. I'm not a writer. I could give a shit less.
Yeah.
I just want to be entertained.
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to learn things, and sometimes I want to explore themes, and sometimes I want to, I read a lot of nonfiction for that very reason. But I'm also fine with just reading fluff and just being able to sit back and enjoy a book for the sake of reading a book.
Yeah.
If it inspires me to read the next book because I absolutely loved it, or I absolutely hated it, and I'm like, oh my God, get this out of my brain, give me something new to read. That is enough inspiration for me. Sometimes, not always.
Yeah. All right, to bring it back to the book, I want to talk about one more a little bit in depth, Rocket Ship to Hell. I have in parentheses, maybe Dan's favorite. So that's me, I'm Dan. And it might be my favorite. Yeah, it is my favorite story. I've read the opening story, The Blameless, the most because it's the first story and it's really fun. But I really like this one, which isn't hard to see why, because it's taking place in a science fiction convention. Not that I'm super into science fiction, but it's a writer's convention. And we have a writer telling a story in a bar, and the writer is drinking a lot of gin. And so that's why it's my favorite story.
I mean, I like all those things.
Yeah, this is very much...
And he's telling a story, like we're in old Ireland, right? Like the wandering storyteller.
Yeah, it's great. The main character is like walking the long halls of the convention, and the convention is still going on, but they want to just take a break and not go to the bar that everyone at the convention is at. So they walk a block or two away to another bar where it's just them and the bartender and one other guy who ends up telling the story about his story, Rocket Ship to Hell.
Yeah, and his inspiration was that he went on a rocket ship adventure. And it was great because it reads like old, well, I guess just old sci-fi, right? The pointy rocket ship. This story, the way that he described his adventure, if you are a Trekkie, in Star Trek Voyager, Tom Paris has a program in the holodeck that he goes to with Harry all the time called Captain Proton. And it's like a black and white, like the old robots, like out of the original Doctor Who and stuff. And it has that like 30s to 50s sci-fi vibe, and definitely got that from this story. So that was really fun for me.
Yeah, the guy telling the story is like an old school science fiction writer who had a bunch of stuff published in old magazines and read like, I don't know, what were those classic science fiction pulp magazines called? Weird Tales was one. Or maybe that's a pulp horror, but...
I mean, I don't know any of the names, to be honest.
I don't know. There's like a couple that always come up when I read about this
magazines
stuff.
Were like Star Trek fan magazine and Star Wars fan magazine. That was it.
But it's just great because this guy's telling the story about the book, Rocket Ship to Hell, that he wrote about this actual experience he went on. And it's just batshit crazy. And they're like, we don't believe you. But he still captures their attention throughout this whole thing while drinking a bunch of gin. And is basically telling the bartender, like, hey, if I can keep telling my story and you guys are still interested and I'm not slurring my words, I'll keep my glass filled to the rim with gin.
And she does, like 4 times, right? And then at the very end, he's all of a sudden sloshed.
Yeah, just suddenly super drunk. It's great because the story he tells is absurd. And what makes these stories cool too is I feel like it could have just been like they met this guy in a bar and he tells the story and you don't know if it's true or not. And you still don't know if it's true or not when the story ends. But then he takes out a copy of the book and is like, here's the book that I'm talking about. Because part of the story is that the people involved with his actual rocket ship journey don't want this book published.
Government secrets. Yeah. Didn't he even say he went to Area 51?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
government's
secrets.
Not going to let him, just like how the moon landing was fake, right?
Right.
So they got to keep it under lock and key, man.
Yeah, but he still has a copy on his person that he's able to share. So he has the, that physical totem that makes his story feel a little bit more true, or at least make them a little more interested in it.
And I love how the story ends with that, right? So the author gives this book to the main character, and he's like, I don't know what to do with this, which is such an interesting thing, right? Like, I would have thought, oh, I would have read it, but I guess he just heard the story, right? So he goes back to the convention and is in the dealer's galley and goes up to a pulp bookseller, and when the bookseller's not paying attention, he just like slides in this book with all these other random books. I just love that ending because it's like, oh man, what if someone buys that and reads it and has no idea it's a true story, you know? And then it's like, oh wow,
and it's a true story hiding government secrets.
Yeah, mind bender, so cool.
After that, we have a few more stories. I think we'll probably stop there, and so we don't just like, you know, go through 13 summaries of every story in here. But I hopefully have given you a pretty good idea of the range that Ford has. He has one that's really cool, Spirits of Salt, A Tale of the Coral Heart, that feels like straight up fantasy, still with some horror elements, I guess. Maybe it's more weird. It's not really a horrific story, but it's like very highly fantasy.
There's a fairy story where they try to make a fairy factory, and they're like the evil Irish fairies, not like the cute Tinkerbell fairies. So he really shows his range in this series very well. Everything, modern, 50s Japan, science fiction, fantasy. Yeah, I think really enjoyed it.
I really like about him is he's really good at creating communities. And what I mean by that is because each of these stories is in such a different setting with different types of characters and different times, he has to create new icebergs for all of these stories, right? Or like all that underlying information that's in the background. And everything feels fully realized, which is part of a writer's job. But because of the range of influences and styles that he's traversing in this collection, it just feels really impressive. Okay, so I will be the first to admit, talking about short story collections is a little bit tricky. I know it's tricky for you, Amber. It's also tricky for me because you get a little bit stuck in like, here's a story, right? But at the same time, if I didn't make you read short stories, you wouldn't read very many. So
that's true.
This is as much for you and for me because I enjoy them to like get these in your brain as a reader. But I hope as a podcast listener, we've done a decent job at making it interesting while jumping, you know, from story to story.
For me, I think that I enjoy talking about the stories, but then I get too sucked into one and I'm like, oh my God, there's like 10 more.
Yeah, it's a little
How do we
tricky.
shift conversation from one to the other without it just feeling stilted? So hopefully our random comments make it not.
Yeah.
Just shut up, Amber. God. Yeah, well, I enjoy it when you make me read short stories. I feel like the hardest part for me is holding my attention, and I only mean because it feels like every time I start a new story, I'm starting over, which is exactly what it is. But because I have so many things always on my plate, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I finished, so now I'm going to go do this other thing. And then it's like, nope, I still have more stories to read. And for whatever reason, and we've talked about this before, right? Like you like the short bursts that you get with short stories. And for me, it's like, no, I need to sit down and focus. And once I'm sucked into a story, then continue it. But it is fun. I'm glad that you make me do it because I really did enjoy all these stories. But again, most of them, I would have been like, oh, I would have liked that if it was longer.
Yeah.
Explored more thoroughly.
I think as a writer, I mean, short stories are just great. Going back to what I was talking about, wanting to be inspired, it feels like you still have to do a lot of the work for a novel in a short story. It's just miniaturized, right? You still have to create the setting, create the characters, create all the stuff that's in a story. And because you're getting them in shorter form, I feel like, oh, I can see different settings and different kind of relationships, like snapshots of them. So I'm getting more story information in my head over the same amount of pages, if that makes sense.
That does, yeah.
Gives me more imagery to play around with in my head, I guess.
Yeah, and that's great. And I like that we have that variety, right? It seems like for how similar we are, or at least similar I feel that we are as people. It's fun that our reading tastes are also similar, but so different.
Yeah. Yeah, we're keeping excited here on Dust to Dawn.
Yes, so exciting. Oh, it's so exciting.
What are your overall thoughts on this collection?
I really enjoyed the variety. I thought it was cool that each story was really in its own world, and he did a very good job of quickly building up those worlds so it didn't feel drawn out like, oh my gosh, we have to set another scene, you know? He did a good job of getting me to care for the characters in each story relatively quickly. And I really do. And I like seeing that too. It's a good thing to understand how authors do that. So I got a lot out of it in how to like work with writers too. I really enjoyed it. I think I definitely enjoyed some stories more than others. And I will admit I was very slightly let down after reading Blameless because I thought that he was going to hold a Shirley Jackson vibe.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
But at the same time, I'm also glad that he wasn't just imitating Shirley Jackson, right?
Yeah.
So I like that he gave a nod to her. But as a big Shirley Jackson fan, obviously I was a little let down because I wanted
more Shirley Jackson.
More. So I guess I should have just been reading Shirley Jackson. No, but I did. I really enjoyed it.
Cool.
What else has he?
Yeah, this is the first I had heard of him. First thing I've read by him.
Okay, yeah, because I'd be curious if he. I would like to read like a full novel by him and see how it compares with his short stories.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that.
That would be fun. And you, good sir?
I mean, you know, I recommended this book. I chose it because I wanted you to read it and I wanted to read it again. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
And you had read it at least once and a half times before, right?
Yeah, I had read it all the way through once before, then a smattering of stories throughout. I just like his balance of humor and weird and horror and literary influences, and it's a cool mix.
Well, on that note, what else have you been reading?
Oh, so I leveled up my intelligence stat at least a little bit. I read a science book, which I always threaten to do every now and then, and I actually do. I don't know. I read a science book once or twice a year, maybe. I don't know. Depends on the year, I guess. This is called Life Finds a Way, What Evolution Teaches Us About Creativity by Andreas Wagner from Austria. And it was really cool. It talked about evolutionary biology. And of course, since it's a science book, it's hard to like paraphrase it all and make sure I don't screw it up. But I'll try to compress it. Essentially, he's talking about how with natural selection, like the Darwinian concept we like most people have, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, people who have a little bit of a science background. But what's interesting is like, okay, imagine a mountain landscape where there are multiple peaks. The way natural selection works is the organism in question can only take forward steps, and evolution will never walk back down the mountain. So what happens is it like whatever peak it's closest to, it goes up to that peak and then reaches the peak, and then that's the best of that species.
Then you get the Übermensch.
The most fit will be at that peak. But what you also need is something called genetic drift. And this was kind of cool because it was talking about like, I don't know, imagine the gene for blue eyes in a family. This book is looking more like, instead of a family, imagine how the blue eye genes like move through generations, you know, millions of years, like how genes move over many, many generations, just a bigger view, I guess. But what genetic drift does is like an AOE where like people going up the mountain or to the sides or back down can be affected by these different things like blue eyes or cancer or long arms or whatever.
Long arms.
I don't know. So this is as complicated
that
as
sounds horrifying.
Somehow the combination of natural selection, which can only go up to the nearest peak, but not necessarily the best peak, and then genetic drift, which is an AOE and can push you into a valley and to the next peak, which might be higher, is how species do stuff in evolution. And then he compares that with creativity which is just really cool. It essentially comes down to science stuff that was interesting.
Did he talk about red hair? Because isn't red hair like technically a genetic? Originally,
no.
was it genetic? Like, what do you call it? Malfunction? I don't know. That's not the right word, but
let's just say one more thing.
Abnormality.
On that point, one of the things that's really cool is he was talking about like breeders who, want to breed cows that get fat easy or whatever. But he's like, what's really interesting about that is the gene that you want to give the cow that makes them fat might also make their bones more brittle. Those features might be tied to one thing, right? So it's not just here's the things I want, it's here's what I want, but they're, the negative consequence you still have to work with.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah, so it was cool. It was just fun to read some science, do some nonfiction, felt my brain be smart. And of course, like, I don't know, it's hard to tell you what was in the book, but I did understand it while I was reading it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, science has a way of making sense as you read it, and then when you're done, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. Oh, it's like learning a language.
Yeah.
Like when people speak German, I'm like, oh yeah, I understood that. And then it's like, well, tell me what they said. And I'm like, nope, can't do that. Cannot translate.
Yeah. Like it's still in there.
Yeah. It just doesn't.
Can't give words to it yet.
Getting from point A to point B is sometimes there's like a weird disconnect. Maybe that's my genetic abnormality.
Maybe. And then read a few bits and bobs across some other books, and including The Horror at Red Hook, which is the story that the next book we're talking about is based on.
And we will talk about next time,
yeah,
right?
I won't go into it. I read that too.
And that's by Lovecraft.
Yes. How about you? What you been reading?
Well, we finally finished A Shocker on Shock Street by R.L. Stine, The Little One and Myself. That had a great twist that I wasn't expecting. Yuli came up with his own expectation. He was wrong, but I was very excited that he came up with one. And then we both were like, wait, what? So if you haven't read Goosebumps in a long time, that was a fun one. I enjoyed it. I also read a nonfiction book, a short one, talking about the Semicolon. It was called Semicolon, The Past, Present, and Future of a Misunderstood Mark by Cecelia Watson. I randomly saw this on my Libby app. I don't know what I was searching for something else, and it just popped up, and I was like, "Ooh, this looks interesting." And so I read it, and it was good. It talked a lot about where the semicolon came from, how it's been used, how people have decided that they loved it, and then it became too pretentious, and then people hated it. But it's also been used in law. Like in
legal cases?
Legal cases, thank you. Yeah. And have helped people get out of stuff and have also not helped people. Like one guy ended up getting the death sentence or getting killed in an electric chair because of a semicolon, because it was like talking about two people who were considered guilty, and the jury said, and, he shall go to jail for life or whatever. And however they phrased it, they used a semicolon instead of a comma. And so the judge who doled out the sentence was like, oh, well, that's a semicolon. This is a different clause now. So he gets the death penalty.
Damn.
Yeah, it was really fucked up.
That's crazy.
But yeah, there have been like debates in law of how laws were written and getting away with stuff. And so it was a fun book. It was a cool read. And it was interesting too, because she was talking shit about style manuals and stuff. And it was fun because I half of my job, I live in the Chicago manual. So having her be like, oh, these stupid style manuals. I'm like, oh, yes, I like hearing this because I appreciate what the manual has in guidelines. But sometimes it's like, that is so fucking nitpicky. So yeah, that was a quick read and fun for writers and editors and the like. And then I got sidetracked and I listened to, I wouldn't call it sidetracked, but I decided I'm going to read some historical fiction because I just felt like it. And so I read Essex Dogs by Dan Jones. And I know I've talked about Dan Jones on here multiple times because he's one of my favorite contemporary, I don't know, like modern historians. He's a popular historian, I guess is the term. So he takes other people's research and makes it layman's terms, basically. So it's more entertaining in a sense. His prose isn't so dry and historical and listing names and numbers like history can kind of digress to sometimes, which I still appreciate, but he makes it interesting for a wider audience. And so I like reading his histories, and I finally sat down and started. This is a trilogy. I read the first book. I'm reading the second one now, and it's about this group called the Essex Dogs who go to France at the beginning of the 100 Years' War. And so their experiences fighting the French in medieval warfare. And it's fun, and they swear a lot, and I love it. So this is like my other passion. So I'm very much enjoying that.
Do they say mangy dogs? Is that a middle-aged thing?
Middle age? Yeah. Medieval? I don't know.
You mangy dogs.
Did you get the joke right there?
No.
You said middle age.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, they just say fuck a lot, they're very gruff, and he actually has a lot of really clever religious ones, like Jesus on the bloody cross, but like way more clever than that. Like, of course, now I can't think of any, but like Mary crushed by the stone of just stupid shit like that. But
hopefully really, not the stone of Jesus to be killing his own not mom.
Well, I don't know. I can't think of any. And I could stay here forever trying to come up with one. But a lot of religious quips like, from the blood of Jesus's hands or something. So, and one character is like digressed heavily into using drugs, and so he sees like Jesus struggling on the cross trying to like close up his side wound while he's like pinned up, and there's like blood spraying, and he's just like, oh, what the fuck. It's good. I enjoy it. If you like historical fiction, Essex Dogs, I recommend it. I think the third book just came out last year, the final book of the trilogy, so we'll see. Maybe he'll go back to writing history. I hope so. But I also really like the historical fiction. So.
That's got to be fun to do history books and then basically decide you want to have fun and do historical fiction.
Yeah, and it's cool because I know he knows his shit, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's not just, I did some research, and he reads to me, and I don't really know Ken Follett's history range specifically, but I always felt that he did a very good job, or does a very good job, of capturing the history within his historical fiction. So he wrote like Pillars of the Earth, for instance. But anyway, so I really enjoyed this series. It was fun, and it's one of my favorite time periods. 100 Years' War is like around the 1330s and then progressed into like the 1450s, but it wasn't like a direct 100 years. They'd have like wars here and there, but the like period of time that England and France were at war. And also it's like during the Black Death and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that because that was very interesting historically to me. So get my medieval kick. Sometimes you just got to go back to what you know you love, right?
It's true.
And on that note, going back, let's go forward. What's on the chopping block? What's
All right,
up next?
Our up next for you guys, we have The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle, followed by You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White, and then The Watchers, A.M. Shine.
I'm really excited for all of those, but I'm especially excited for The Watchers because that is airing on St. Patrick's Day.
Yep, and it's Irish.
Yes, it's an Irish author.
Irish published too? I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out.
It's also a film or a TV show now. I think it's a film.
Okay.
Or a TV show.
Find out when we get there.
Yeah, but that's also kind of frightening because that is March. And today is the first day of February. So
get reading.
Time sure does have a way of moving on forward.
Yeah, we look forward to talking to you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.